بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. In today's era, the common ideology that we see within practically everyone in the globe, not necessarily a religious belief, but something common that we find within ourselves, as well as people who have different beliefs, as well as people from different countries, the whole globe, is this concept of you only live once, right? The youngsters are smiling because they know you only live once. This is a mindset that is widespread throughout the whole globe. That the purpose of life is to attain happiness. So you can ask almost everyone, what is the purpose of life? They'll give you various definitions, but ultimately they'll say happiness. And you try to gain that no matter what the cost. Fulfill your desires, and that's the purpose of life. Then they put a caveat, as long as you're not hurting anyone else. So fulfill your desires, as long as that doesn't entail that you hurt someone else, then this is kind of what life is all about. If something makes you happy, go ahead and do it. Go for whatever makes you happy. That's the maqsad, the purpose why we are here. Now, even if someone disagrees with the words that I'm saying, they will, in their actions, agree. Unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because this is not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Allah ta'ala doesn't want us to necessarily chase what makes us happy. Rather, He wants to impose on us certain things that doesn't necessarily make us happy. Certain things that we may not want to do. At the end, of course, these things are better for us, and that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it incumbent for us to do. However, we may not want to do these things. We may not want to fast. We may not want to perform salah. We may not want to avoid sin. But Allah imposes that upon us. So if we are in this, we have this mindset that I will chase whatever makes me happy at whatever cost. As long as I don't hurt others, we're forgetting one thing, that we're always hurting ourselves. And that is why at the end of every salah, we make a dua. Allahumma inni zalamtu nafsi zulman kathira. That dua is very special. It means, oh Allah, I've wronged myself greatly. What does it mean that you and I wrong ourselves? When you and I sin, when we do something incorrect, when we disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can we actually harm Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by disobeying Him? Do we cause Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala some difficulty by not obeying what He has told us to do? Not at all. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need us. Rather, what is actually happening is we're harming ourselves through these sins. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want from us? Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want us to chase that which makes us happy? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Jathiyah, verse number 23, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ وَأَضَلَّهُ اللَّهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ وَخَتَمَ عَلَى سَمْعِهِ وَقَلْبِهِ وَجَعَلَ عَلَى بَصَرِهِ غِشَاوَةً فَمَنْ يَهْدِيهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ اللَّهِ أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, have you seen that person who goes after his desires? Have you looked at that individual who makes his desires his ilah, his God? What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying here? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that those who chase after a thing, you're essentially making that your God, your focal point. What is an ilah? It's your focal point. That which you worship, that which you're going after, that which you want to please. Everyone has an ilah. An atheist has an ilah. Their own mind, their own desires. We also have an ilah. And we say that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, have you seen the one who chases his desires and made his desires his focal point? Made his desires his ilah. and he has been led astray by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, despite having knowledge that his own desires is not the creator, but he follows it as if it were. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cast a seal over his ears, over his heart, over his eyes there is a curtain. Who will guide such a person if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not? So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to oppose the desires, not to chase the desires. And the ironic part is, by opposing your desires, you will gain happiness. By opposing what you want, you will truly be happy, which is counterintuitive. But this is the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, he says regarding this ayah, he says this regarding the individual who has made his deen his own desires. فَلَا يَهْوَى شَيْئًا إِلَّا رَكِبَهُ. Whatever he desires, he will do it. This is what we find. This is the new fitna in this world at this time. Whatever desires we have, we go after it. And what makes all of this worse is complete access to these desires. It's not difficult to fulfill desires anymore. In the past, if a person had desires, they have it within themselves. It's very difficult to enact that. In today's time, all you need is a cell phone. All you need is internet access. All you need is something nearby. And a person can easily fulfill their desires. So it makes it even more difficult. It makes it harder for us to even be a Muslim in these times. One thing we all have to understand is, as Muslims, we are total slaves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. He doesn't want us to fulfill desires. He wants us to show our servitude and slavery to Him. That is what makes us different from everyone else. We are slaves. And some people, they don't like the term slave, but that is what we are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not a servant, we are abd, a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the purpose of your life and the purpose of my life is not enjoyment. That's not why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. The purpose is serving Allah, worshipping Allah, doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, and sacrificing the desires. And that is why Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, لَيْسَ الشَّدِيدُ بِالسُّرَعَةِ إِنَّمَا الشَّدِيدُ الَّذِي يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ. The strong person is not one who can topple another person, who can wrestle and pick someone up and drop them down. That doesn't mean you're strong. Yes, you have physical strength, but what is physical strength? True strength is the person that can they have self-constraint. They can hold themselves back when they're upset. That is true strength. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see our strength. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing us. This life is not Jannah. And that attitude that we have to fulfill our desires is the attitude of a person who does not believe in the akhirah. Is the attitude of a person who believes that this is my Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see how strong you are in holding yourself back. When your eyes fall on something haram, can you divert that? When your ears hear something that you're not supposed to be listening to, can you turn away? When you want to say something, when you want to speak bad about another individual, can you hold yourself back when you have that desire? That's true strength. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see from us. And that is the test of life. In one hadith, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says very beautifully, الدنيا سجن المؤمن فإذا فارق الدنيا فارق السجن. The dunya, this life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made for you and I, it's not your Jannah, it's not your final abode, it's a temporary residence. He says the dunya is the prison for the believer. This is your prison. The place where you and I want to fulfill our desires is supposed to be our prison. And when a person leaves the dunya, they have left prison. Our view regarding death is not the end of life. Death is freedom. Because when you come out of the prison, you're finally free. So this is the prison that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed us in. Our job is to treat it as such. In another narration, Salman radiyallahu anhu says that he heard from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that he said, Inna atwala nasi ju'an yawm al-qiyamah aktharuhum shiba'an fi dunya. The person who will be most hungry on yawm al-qiyamah will be the one who had satiated himself the most in dunya. The one who ate the most in dunya, he'll be the most hungry on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Why? He had no self-restraint. Whatever he wanted, he chased it. And he's only causing deprivation for himself in Yawm al-Qiyamah. Ya Salman, ad-dunya sijnul mu'min wa jannatul kafir. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, O Salman, the dunya is the prison for the believer, and it is also the Jannah for the kafir. You decide how you want to live. Do you want the life of a Muslim, or do you want the life of a kafir? We can observe how we are living our lives by our attitudes regarding the dunya. Whenever I want something, do I go after it? Or do I observe, is this halal? Is this allowed? What are the ramifications of fulfilling my desires here? Am I cautious about these aspects? If I am, then I'm living like a mu'min. And if I follow whatever my desires say, even if it be halal, the Sahaba would avoid halal because it might lead to haram. The Sahaba would choose to eat rough food, difficult to digest food, because they wanted to act in this manner. But this dunya is my sijin, it's my prison. In another narration, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, narrated by Abdullah bin Amr, ad-dunya sijnul mu'min wa sanatuh. The dunya is the prison for the believer and the drought for the believer. This is a drought. فَإِذَا خَرَجَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا فَارَقَ السِّجْنَ وَالسَّنَةِ. When the believer leaves the dunya, they have left drought, they have left the prison. What does it mean that the dunya is a drought? In times of drought, you have to be extremely careful. You have to take rations. You have to be cautious of what you are taking. Limit yourself, even if it is halal. If you have a storage room full of rice and it's a drought, there's no more rice coming. Rice is halal. You can eat the rice, but are you going to eat all of it in one day? You're going to slowly take as little as possible to survive that drought. This is what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is saying. Take what you need, don't go beyond that. This is the teaching of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And this is what the Sahaba practiced. And this is what we are missing in our lives. And this is why we chase after happiness and we never seem to get it. We act like the donkey with the carrot in front of its head, and we keep running. The faster you run, the more tired you become, and you have not gotten closer to the carrot. In another hadith, Abu Hurairah says, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, ad-dunya sijnul mu'min wa jannatul kafir. In Sahih Muslim, the dunya is the prison for the believer, it is the Jannah for the kafir. The kafir fulfills all of their desires, and they have nothing left for them in the akhirah. As for the believer, this is your prison. How is the dunya the prison for you and I? Everything in Islam is regulated. Not just government. Every aspect of your life is regulated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He tells you when to wake up. He tells you when to go to sleep. He tells you when to stand in prayer. He tells you what to look at. He tells you what to listen to. He puts restrictions on your tongue. You cannot do a single thing without it being regulated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is your prison. Just like if someone goes to prison, they can't choose what they wear. They have to wear that prison garb. They can't choose when they go out into the courtyard. They're allowed to go in that specific time, and they have to go at that time. They cannot choose what they eat. They're given a specific meal. They can't eat more than that. And they're told when lights are out, you have to go to sleep, you have to wake up. Everything is regulated. This is what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is saying. This is dunya for you and I. The question is, do we lead our lives in this manner? This is what Allah wants from you. Allah wants you to be a true slave. Wake up Fajr time, wake up Tahajjud time. Come for Salah. Take your eyes away from haram. Take your ears away from haram. This is the prison. If you survive the prison, you get the na'im of the akhirah. Imam al-Nawawi, he talks about this hadith. He says, مَعْنَاهُ أَنَّ كُلَّ مُؤْمِنٍ مَسْجُونٍ. Every single mu'min and possessor of iman is in a prison. You and I are in prison right now. مَمْنُوعٌ فِي الدُّنْيا مِنَ الشَّهَوَاتِ الْمُحَرَّمَةِ وَالْمَكْرُوهَةِ. You are not allowed to fulfill your haram and disliked desires. The desires that you and I have, which are haram, which are impermissible, we're not allowed to fulfill that. مُكَلَّفٌ بِفِعْلِ الطَّاعَاتِ الشَّاقَّةِ. You and I are compelled by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fulfill difficult tasks. We have to do difficult tasks. What do prisoners do? Some of them in the chain gang, they go outside, they have to work on the freeway, they have to clean up, they have to do community service. They get no pay from it. You and I have to perform salah 5 times a day. You and I have to discharge zakat, go for hajj, fast in Ramadan. These are not easy tasks. فَإِذَا مَاتَ إِسْتَرَاحَ مِنْ هَذَا. When the believer dies, he is free from all of this. That is your freedom. When you die, you walk out of the prison. وَانْقَلَبَ إِلَى مَا أَعَدَّ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى لَهُ مِنَ النَّعِيمِ الدَّائِمِ. And he goes towards what Allah has preserved for him. All of that difficulty that you went through, every salah you performed, every fast you kept, is building for you a Jannah in your free home, in your akhirah. You will go towards that when you die. And you will finally be free from the difficulties of dunya. When you and I take the shahada, when we say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, what does that mean? In essence, what it means is I am handing my freedom to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam is actually istislam, submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what Islam is. And a Muslim is a submitter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are you and I submitting? We're submitting everything. Even your mind is submitted to Allah. Your tongue is given to Allah. Your eyes are given to Allah. Your heart is given to Allah. You cannot use these things the way you want anymore. If you truly meant that shahada, you can no longer use these things the way you want. You must use them in the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَمَنْ يَرْغَبُ عَنْ مِلَّةِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِلَّا مَنْ سَفِيهَ نَفْسَهُ وَلَقَدْ اصْطَفَيْنَاهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَإِنَّهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ لَمِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. Who except a fool will go away from the method of Ibrahim alayhi salam? We have chosen him in dunya, and in the akhirah he's amongst the righteous. You'd have to be a fool not to follow the way of Ibrahim. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ أَسْلِمْ. Remember the time when Allah said to Ibrahim, submit. Submit to me. Submit what? Your mind, your heart, your eyes, your ears, your tongue, your body, everything you must submit to me now. قَالَ أَسْلَمْتُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Ibrahim alayhi salam said, I have submitted to the Lord of the universe. I gave everything. It's yours. And this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, if you do not follow this methodology of Ibrahim, you are a fool. And many of us have iman, yet we are fooling ourselves because we're following our desires. We're not following the method of Ibrahim. We're not submitting to Allah. In another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بَلَا مَنْ أَسْلَمَ وَجَهَهُ لِلَّهِ وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ فَلَهُ أَجْرُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Indeed, the one who submits their face to Allah. Why does Allah mention face? Your eyes are in your face, your nose, your tongue, your ears, your aql, your intellect. Everything must be submitted to Allah. Man aslama wajhahu lillah. He who submits everything to Allah and does good actions, they will have a reward with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will have no fear and they will not grieve. In the end of the day, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, if you submit everything to Allah, you will not be in grief, you will not have any fear. This is true success, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us. You will not see the fruits of your success in dunya. That's not the purpose. Some people are given that by Allah, some people are not. That is not how you and I gauge success though. If someone has wealth, if someone has been given a lot by Allah, that is not how we gauge success. Success can only be gauged in the akhirah. When we see those scales being weighed, and we see those going into Jahannam and Allah is allowing us to go to Jannah, that is when you gauge your success. Not in dunya. So this whole rat race that we're all in, seeing what this other person has done, how much wealth they have, how many homes they have, what they've accomplished, what degrees they have, this is all folly. But if you see someone engaged in a'mal, engaged in coming away from the dunya, these are signs of success. But truly we will see it in the akhirah. One thing I wanted to talk about, this is in general, we need to be cautious. We need to be aware. What is our position in dunya? What is our goal in dunya? What is true success in dunya? These have to be recalibrated. Every single day we're engaging with the dunya, everyone is telling us that true success is fulfilling your desires. As long as you don't hurt anyone, you fulfill your desires, you're successful. We have to continuously remind ourselves this is not success. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say it's success. Success is submitting to Allah. How much can I submit to Him? How much can I avoid those desires? Every time someone tells you follow your desires, or there's some subliminal message saying follow your desires, if you can avoid that, you are truly successful. This dunya is dajjal, it's deception. People are out there trying to indoctrinate us, trying to tell us what to look at, what to hear, what to decide, what to feel. But Allah has already told us. We accept the indoctrination of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over anyone else. One of the greatest obstacles, specifically talking about one obstacle that we all face, and one of the greatest in our times today, is the sins of the eyes. All of us are involved in this. You cannot go outside without getting involved in the sins of the eyes. This is extremely detrimental to us. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he says, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, it's narrated in Sahih Muslim, كُتِبَ عَلَى ابْنِ آدَمْ نَصِيبُهُ مِنَ الزِّنَا مُدْرِكٌ ذَلِكَ لَا مَحَالَةً. It is written for each child of Adam alayhi salam, every human being, it is written for them how much zina they will do. Zina, adultery, how much they will do. فَالْعَيْنَانِ زِنَاهُمَا النَّظَرُ. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, you don't have to do the actual zina to be counted as adultery. Every single body part has a type of adultery. The zina of the eyes is the gaze. When uncontrolled, a person is engaged in zina. وَالْأُذُنَانِ زِنَاهُمَا الْإِسْتِمَاعِ. The ears, when uncontrolled, the zina of the ears is listening to haram. وَاللِّسَانُ زِنَاهُ الْكَلَامِ. The zina of the tongue is speech, incorrect speech, ghiba, etc. وَالْيَدُ زِنَاهَا الْبَطْشِ. The zina of the hands is to touch that which it should not be touching. وَالرِّجْلُ زِنَاهَا الْخُطَى. The zina of the legs is walking towards haram. وَالْقَلْبُ يَهْوَى وَيَتَمَنَّى. And the heart, it desires, it wants, it seeks, it chases. وَيُصَدِّقُ ذَلِكَ الْفَرْجُ وَيُكَذِّبُهُ. And the private parts will ultimately engage in the true zina when it follows that haram desire of the heart. So in this hadith, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us, we're engaged in zina. Don't think that zina is only that zina that person is doing out there, and we're excluded from that. He says every child of Adam is engaged in some level of zina, and Allah has written that down for them, and they will engage in that. Right before we came for Jumu'ah, how many of us we did zina with the eyes, we did zina of the ears, did zina of the tongue. This is being written down, and thus we need to seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness. And as I was saying, the one of the greatest and most difficult to control is the zina of the eyes, the most far-reaching. Your voice can only go so far. Your ears can only pick up so much. The eyes can go as far as the sight can see. This is very dangerous. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seeks to control all of this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does control this. He wants us to be in His control. This is a true believer when they have submitted their eyes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says in Surah An-Nur, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ. Tell the believers, O Muhammad, tell the mu'mineen to lower their gaze and protect their private parts. ذَلِكَ أَزْكَى لَهُمْ. This is pure for them. إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا يَصْنَعُونَ. Allah is aware of what you're doing. يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ. He knows the deception of the eyes and what the hearts conceal. Every time you and I look at haram, no one else knows that. No one can see where your eyes are going. It's too quick. Allah knows. He knows when your eyes have deceived yourself. You made a pact with Allah. When you said, La ilaha illallah, you said, there is no one else that I will submit to other than Allah. And then you deceive that pact. You look at haram. You're now submitting to your own hawa. You're submitting to your own desires. Are we not those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about in the ayah? أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you not seen the one who has taken their desires and made that their ilah? Who are you and I submitting to, if not Allah? When we look at haram, when we speak haram, listen to haram, at that moment, we're doing a miniature type of kufr. Not real kufr, inshallah. If that was the case, who would be Muslim? Allah is forgiving. But we are being deceptive to that pact we made to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you and I say, La ilaha illallah, we're making a pact that you are my source, my focal point. I will give everything to you. Inni wajjahtu wajhi لِلَّذِي فَطَرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ حَنِيفًا وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. The words of Ibrahim again. I have focused my attention to the one who created the heavens and the earth completely. And I do not do shirk. What does this mean? Shirk of idols, that's included, but shirk of your own desires. Fight your desires, fight that shirk. And one of the greatest forms of pleasure is when you know you have the secret pact between you and Allah. You know that something is haram there. It's in your field of gaze. You can turn your eyes and you can get that one moment of ladha and pleasure, or you can turn your eyes away and you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can see that. You know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that you turn that gaze away for what? Only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No other reason. Because it's desirable to look at that. You get that small moment of happiness in your heart. But when you look away, Allah knows, only Allah knows. There's pure ikhlas in that. When you and I perform salah, people are watching. When we give zakat, the person who's taking knows that we're giving zakat. Hajj, everyone's there. Fasting, everyone knows we're fasting. But when you turn that gaze away, that's pure ikhlas. No one knows this but Allah. And the amount of happiness that Allah will pour in your heart when you do that, it's immeasurable. This is a gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives. Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah says, if you want true ibadah, you want to feel close to Allah, you want to worship Allah and feel the ladha and the desire that ibadah contains, control the eyes. And you will have that. And that is one reason why you and I do not enjoy ibadah. When we start the takbir tahrima, we start salah, we're thinking about how can I finish as soon as possible. We're thinking about everything else. Every type of ibadah, whether it is reciting Quran, dhikr of Allah, it's not in our lives. And if it is, it's superficially there. We're not thinking about it. You're reciting Quran, you think about everything else. When you're doing dhikr of Allah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, you're not thinking about Allah. Let's be serious. One of the greatest reasons for this is we have no control over our eyes. We look at whatever we want. We forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ. He knows the deception that you are creating with your eyes and what your heart is containing. He only knows that. And in fact, He knows that more than you and I. يَعْلَمُ السِّرَّ وَأَخْفَى. He knows the secrets that you contain, and He knows that which is more secret, that which you don't even know, and that is in your heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that. This is something that we have to be very cautious and aware of. I want to share some benefits of lowering the gaze. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq. This can only come from Allah. I'm summarizing from Imam Ibn al-Qayyim. He mentioned about 8 or 9 different benefits. We'll mention 7. The first one is removal of grief. If you can protect your eyes, Allah will give you happiness in your heart. That grief will be taken away. Why? Every time you and I look at haram, that is a small moment of pleasure that we have. It's followed by grief. Automatically it's followed by grief. The system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, if you are going to instantly gratify yourselves, you are going to have a very long moment of grief after that. And true happiness is found after difficulty. This is true happiness. Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. After difficulty you'll have ease. This is the system of Allah. So if you're getting something that is very pleasurable immediately, instant gratification, understand that right after that you're going to feel grief. So if we can protect our eyes from haram, avoid looking at haram, Allah will guarantee that we'll have happiness. Controlling our gaze creates nur in our heart, effulgence, light, illumination. It creates a happiness that we cannot explain. And this is a proof. Try it out and see. If you want to see the proof that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists, don't look at haram and feel the happiness in your heart grow. This is a dalil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is casting happiness in your heart. Allah will endow you with insight, with the capability of thinking deeply. Shuja' al-Kirmani, he says, Man ammara zahirahu bittiba'i sunnah, wa batinahu bidawami al-muraqabah, wa ghadda basarahu anil muharim, wa kaffa nafsahu anil shahawat, wa akala min al-halal, lam tukhti firasatuhu. He says the person who follows the sunnah outwardly, his physical body, everything he does is according to sunnah. And his inward is always doing muraqabah, always thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he's capable of lowering the gaze from haram, and he's able to restrain himself from doing the haram, and he eats halal, if he can do all of these things, he will have insight, spiritual insight, which is called firasa. This was seen in the Sahaba. One time someone came to Uthman radiallahu anhu, and Uthman radiallahu anhu looked at him and he said, "You just did a sin." So then the person, he actually did commit a sin. He said, "Awahyun ba'da Rasulillah?" Is there wahy after Rasulullah? How do you know this? He said, "There's no wahy, but there's firasa that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to his slaves." Hassan al-Basri is reported to have said, the doors of firasa, the doors of insight, spiritual insight, things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give to you, is continuously open in the skies. For every one of us, the door of spiritual insight is open. But you and I close that through sin. Every time you and I sin, we close it a little bit. And every time we avoid sin, Allah opens that for us. And one of the greatest benefits that we can have is self-constraint. We become strong. This is true strength. As Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, strength is not throwing someone on the ground, suplexing them, doing different wrestling moves. That's not strength. That's what we thought when we were children. True strength is constraint. Being able to hold yourself back, that is true strength. That is what Allah wants to see. Ask yourself this. Do you consider yourself a strong person? Do you want to be a strong person? Then start casting your gaze away. Start looking away from haram. Start choosing Allah over that which you want yourself. And the last great benefit is there are 7 doors of Jahannam. Laha sab'atu abwab. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, 7 different gates of Jahannam. And scholars say these 7 are in accordance to the different sins. So there is one gate of Jahannam. Those people who sin greatly with the eyes, they'll enter through that gate. If you and I can control our gaze, we can restrain ourselves for the sake of Allah. We actually close that door. You're capable of closing a door of Jahannam for yourself. What better ni'mah is there than that? Now, I'm going to finish now, but some methods that you and I can put into place so that we can control our gaze. This is very important. Every one of us is involved in this. We need to be able to control ourselves. We need to have a daily talk with ourselves. This was the sunnah of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. People heard him doing this. We may think people like this are crazy, but these are the awliya of Allah. Every morning he would wake up and he would grab his tongue, he would speak to himself. He said, if you are straight, if you're controlled, all the rest of the body is going to be controlled. And if you are let loose, everything is going to be let loose. Do this with your eyes. Tell yourself, if you look at haram, everyone else is destroyed. We're going to Jahannam. And if you can control yourself, everyone else is going to be okay. As soon as you look at haram, that will enter your heart. It will affect your mind. It will affect your thought process. And that's how sins come from us. Tell yourself, you are a slave of Allah. Your eyes belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not yourself. Tell yourself, if you want to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the greatest ni'mah that anyone can ever have is seeing Allah in the akhirah. Tell yourself, if you want to see Allah, why use those same eyes that will see Allah for haram? You're looking at haram and you want to look at Allah. Pure things and najasa do not mix. So when you cast your eyes on that najasa, don't think you can look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another thing we can tell ourselves, if we want to feel the pleasure of worship, we need to control the eyes. You choose. So many people have this complaint, I can't enjoy my ibadah. Are you controlling your eyes or not? Most likely we're not. And some adhkar that we can do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah Al-Alaq, أَلَمْ يَعْلَمْ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ يَرَى. What does this mean? Do they not know that Allah sees? We can recite this over and over. Think about what it means. أَلَمْ يَعْلَمْ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ يَرَى. أَلَمْ يَعْلَمْ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ يَرَى. Do they not know that Allah is watching? Do they not know that Allah is watching? Continuously recite this. Inshallah, it will give you the awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another such ayah that I was mentioning, يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ. You can recite this often. He knows the treachery of the eyes and what the hearts conceal. Continuously recite this. Inshallah, in those times where you want to fulfill those desires, that ayah will come into your mind. And inshallah, you'll be able to hold yourself back. And understand that this is a practice. We need to practice lowering our gaze. Yes, we will fail. Yes, we will try and then eventually fall into looking at haram. But try again. Keep doing that. Every time you cast your gaze away, you have gotten that much stronger. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you a quwwah inside yourselves. You can do this, inshallah. We do stumble, but we're going to keep trying, inshallah, because that's what life is all about. We keep stumbling until we make it. You keep failing until you don't. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this quwwah, true strength of controlling our faculties, especially the eyes, not looking at haram. This is one of the plagues of today's time. We are indulging too much in this haram. We ask Allah for tawfiq. Sallallahu tabaraka wa ta'ala ala khayri khalqi Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Assalamu alaikum.